two super speakers ready for the next session. We're going to try and keep this interactive, really. So this is all about leadership, and leadership is something that has become a more popular term, I'd suggest, over the last 2 or 3 years. And there's obviously now in GP training, there are bits of evidence that you need to show in terms of leadership. And we get a lot of questions about certain types of assessment that can be done from a leadership point of view, particularly in ST3. So I think it's a really important topic to talk about. And some people often think about leadership as something to think about after training, or actually we're going to try and put across the point of view today that it's something that you should be thinking about right from the beginning of training, and even before that if you get a chance. So we've got two super speakers. I'm not going to spend too long introducing them, because they're going to tell you themselves a little bit about their journeys and where they've got to in their leadership career, because they've both done some really amazing things in the world of general practice. So I'm just going to see if our two speakers are here, Sonali and Amy. Brilliant. Four people. Thank you. So what I'm going to try and do is just pause this screen, or actually before we go into the talk, let's just quickly do our fifth poll just to see where people are again when it comes to this topic. So quick yes or no, guys. Are you interested in leadership as a GP trainee? I'll be honest, when I was a GP trainee, the term leadership, I didn't even think about it. It's something that wasn't talked about, it wasn't mentioned, but I'm sure in the current climate, it's something that you are hearing a lot of as a GP trainee. Come on, guys, let's get to 60%, at least another few clicks, please. Good, good. 80% are interested in leadership as a GP trainee. And I wonder if that poll was done 5-10 years ago, would it have been a different story? But that's a good starting point. So hopefully now our two speakers can shed some light and some depth into this term. Welcome, you guys. Let me see if I can just pause this screen. Good. So hopefully we have you in full view. Welcome, Sonali. Welcome, Amy. Can I hand over to you guys just to do a quick intro of yourselves, if that's okay, before we start?
Yes, Sonali, so should I go? So thank you so much for having us today. So my name is Amy Dehn Lunn. I'm a GPST3 and I'm a clinical fellow in the primary care team at NHS England and NHS Improvement, working with Sonali and others in the team. And I thought it's probably helpful to say that the fellowship that I'm doing is, I don't know if people have come across it, it's the National Medical Directors Clinical Fellow Scheme, which is something that's run by the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management. And I'm mentioning this because I'll talk a bit about my experiences, but if it's something that people are interested in, I feel like I've got huge amounts out of having this opportunity. And so I'd strongly encourage, if it sounds interesting to you after hearing from me, then please check it out and think about applying. Comes highly recommended by me. So yeah, I thought it would probably be helpful if I just give a brief overview of some of the things that I've been doing in this role. And it's been quite nice to have the chance to sort of think through it in order to come and talk about it with you guys. So back in September 2019, I started as a fellow at NHS England and NHS Improvement, which I might sometimes call NHS EI, so sorry for the acronym. I was just starting to kind of get to grips with the organisation, settle in, find some interesting projects when obviously COVID-19 hit, and I started, I think it was in February, I started working on the COVID-19 response in primary care. And I led on the GP standard operating procedure, which was the guidance that we produced to try to support general practice teams respond to COVID-19. And I think one of the things I wanted to pick up from that time, which was, I mean, it was an incredibly steep learning curve for me. It was a very high pressure, stressful environment. And I was kind of really lucky to be working really closely with senior leaders, including Nikki, who some of you may have come across. And I think there were some things that I sort of noticed that people were doing that I found incredibly impressive. And I suppose I just want to pick up on here, they're things that I would sort of like to emulate as I go through my career. And I think some of it was about what I'd call ethical leadership. I think in that kind of high stakes, high pressure environment, the importance of having a really strong internal ethical compass to help navigate the situation just struck me as so important, and something that, yeah, I'd like to hold on to for myself. I think another key thing was I don't know quite how to frame it, but kind leadership, inclusive leadership, and kind of engaged leadership. So and I guess the two things I wanted to pick up there were that the importance of listening, both to your your team, to the people in the wider organisation, but also something that I thought was really important at that time was being visible and engaged more widely. And I think that comes with potential costs, and I don't know how I'd feel about doing it, but kind of engaging on social media, reaching out, hearing people's views, it was something that I found very impressive to witness, and I think was really important in a situation where, you know, information was changing really fast. It feels like quite a long time ago now, but there was a lot of uncertainty around. And yeah, so I suppose I just wanted to pick up on those as things that I think, and one more point, which was the importance of kind of the personal in those situations. So when you've got loads of work on and loads of work pressures, the importance of taking the time to check in with how people are doing as people and those relationships. And I guess some of those things I feel I am already trying to build into how I work, and some of those are less relevant for me at this stage of where I'm at. But yeah, that was just something I wanted to mention. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is some of the work I'm doing around health inequalities. And I guess the reason I wanted to pick up on this is that it's something that I've had a long-standing interest in, commitment to in my practice, clinical practice. And I feel incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to be working on this with kind of real experts at a national level. And I was thinking about, I don't know how many people here managed to make Martin Marshall's keynote talk this morning, but I was thinking about what he was saying about relationship-based care and that importance of sort of trust and commitment to our individual patients. And I think part of it for me is about how, and one of the amazing things about general practice is how we also can do that with communities, how we can build that relationship with our wider patient population and the communities that we serve. And I guess that's something that I would like to continue to build on in my career. And I think I'll hand over to Sonali now, but really looking forward to people's questions. Oh, so one more thing before I go is that I also am a mum to a toddler who is currently out on a walk, but just mentioning it in case she comes back. I've got the door closed behind me, but you never know. So yeah, handing over to Sonali now.
Thanks for that, Amy. And the little ones are always welcome on the conference. You know, that's one thing we absolutely have embraced during the pandemic, but I think maybe we'd want to discuss something about the work-life balance or flow or chaos, whatever people may want to call that. So hi everyone, my name is Sonali Kinra, and I'm a general practitioner. I practice in London, and a massive thanks to both Aman and Pooja for inviting us to come and talk to all of you. And wow, I can see there are about 300 odd attendees, and really well done on sparing your Saturday morning. But of course, there's lots to gain. We've already heard from Martin and from Angela, and what a brilliant start to the day. So I hope you've all managed to get some coffee and are sitting comfortably wherever you are. And if your little ones are listening in as well, then let's do that. Let's inspire them to become leaders as well. And maybe something that we can, discuss, what does leadership really mean? Because 79% of you are interested, so it'll be interesting to hear what does that really mean for you. So a little bit about myself. As I said, I'm a GP in London. I've been now a GP for about 14 years. I'm an international medical graduate, so I did my graduation in India, in Pune, and after completing my graduation, I moved to the UK. Many of you, if you're international medical graduates, general practice doesn't mean much, I would say, in maybe other parts of the world. Each country has a different way, I think, that they offer healthcare, and one of the beauties of UK is really National Health Service, isn't it? It's care free at the point of delivery, and one doesn't have to think, have you got really money in your pocket to be able to access healthcare? So I moved to the UK in 2004, and I landed in a place called Kettering in Northamptonshire, and started, as many international medical graduates do, with a clinical attachment in gastroenterology, then got my job there. So I started very much in a hospital training rotation. And during my experience of being in the hospital training rotation, while I was working actually in gastroenterology, was exposed to general practice. And I remember still the discussions that I used to have in our hospital mess as to what does general practice really mean, and got very curious, got very inquisitive as to let's go and find out more. So went and spoke with a few GPs, people who were taking exams. I said, okay, maybe I can study with them, read with them, and see if I can apply for the exams. and did that and really embraced general practice actually right from there. I completed my MRCP in the hospital, still had my interest in gastroenterology, so there was something at the back of my mind that I'd want to do something in the primary care, secondary care interface. And I know one of you asked the questions, I think, to Martin, as to there is still lots to do in that space. So something, again, we can pick up later. Then did my general practice training, doing various specialties, and which included pediatrics and obs and gynae. I didn't get a chance to do accident and emergency because they took my hospital training into consideration. So I just wonder if it was something that I missed there. Whether I did or I did not was something to, I guess, ponder about. And then straight from there, actually, straight after my training, I got into a salaried role through one of my trainers' colleagues. They were looking for a salaried GP, and I joined straight after. So I started in an ex-mining town in Kobe, so very deprived, and probably not so many people who looked like me in that area. So it was interesting, certainly, but also something for me to learn. You just come out of training while you're very excited that you've got a room to yourself and you've got now a nameplate, but it can also be very daunting. My first day in general practice training, I remember going and crying back when I came back home, because I said, oh my God, what have I done? Where's the camaraderie? There's no mess. There are no people around me, and suddenly I was given this responsibility. So it was daunting, but I had a very, supportive trainer who was quite happy to talk me through. This was a world completely new to me. I had not seen general practice. But having the support of my trainer, actually having the support of my peer. I remember that, one of my colleagues who was training, and we're still in touch, Dr. Jibu Koshi, and we used to discuss, he used to be someone who used to love doing home visits, getting out and about, whereas I used to love plonking myself in the practice room and seeing patients come and me having a chat with them. So I did my general practice, completed my training, moved to become a GP, and from Kobe then moved to Nottingham. My husband got his training number, and we moved to Nottingham, and that's where I really actually felt at home. I established my roots there, got a partnership, and was there for about 7 to 8 years. Really built that family of general practice around where you take your whole self to work, and I was one person, whether it was Diwali or whether it was Christmas, everything happened in the practice. My practice has actually gone out for, we did fusion Indian meals on Christmas one year, just really embracing that multicultural diversity, which we all brought into work. During the part of my, when I was just starting to understand general practice a lot better, that, like Martin was saying, trying to start understanding the consultation skills, start to getting to know my patients. I started to explore other areas as well, and actually was prompted by my appraiser to contact somebody who was working in hepatology to explore my interest further in that primary care, secondary care interface area. And I started to do hepatology clinics in a tertiary hospital. So it was GP with specialist interest in hepatology, and I used to see patients that those that could be seen in primary care. So really starting to actually develop that relationship with secondary care, so that those people who didn't need to be in the hospital, and abnormal liver function tests are probably the ones that come up most highly in that, and maybe one topic for a later discussion on gastro and hepatology. They didn't need to be in the hospital, and it was an education both for them from secondary care point of view. We can manage this in primary care, but also within primary care as to what really service or experience were they getting in secondary care. So that was my introduction really into the interface. And with that, when I was discussing with my other senior partner at the practice, I said, I want to see what is the world outside my consulting room. How can I do something that equally influences what I do in my consulting room, and take that richness, that conversation that I'm having with my patients, to impact on a wider scale. Because even though it's 10 minutes of the consultation, and sometimes we come across some real tricky problems, But I just used to think, well, I'm sure it's not just me who's having this problem. Somebody else is probably as well. What can we offer on a much more wider scale to be able to benefit all? And that probably goes to the point that Amy was talking about health inequalities, because we know it's only 20% of health, your overall health and well-being. Healthcare only contributes to 20% of that. It's all the wider determinants of health that really impacted it otherwise. And just as I was starting to explore that, I started to put my hand up to say, okay, we spoke about leadership opportunity. And I started to put my hand up to say, there's something they want to do in the liver space, or can I do it? Can I look further into it and come back with a pathway that may work for other people? We'll probably go about it in detail later. So after I put my hand up once and started to make a little bit of just making myself heard and seen and made more visible, I had other opportunities that came on. So within Nottingham, I tried everything, whether that was the local medical committee, or whether that was the Royal College GP, the Vale of Trent faculty, or whether that was the Federation. I had to go at it all and started to really chart out what I really enjoyed. From that, also then developed interest further in workforce. So I still continue as a GP retention lead for the Nottinghamshire Integrated Care System. And I more recently took on the role as a clinical associate in NHS England and Improvement. And that's where I work with Amy and with Dr. Nikki Kanani's team. We'll go further into what that means, but I'm just going to pause because I know I've been talking for at least last few minutes, but we'll just pause for some questions and also get to hear what the audience want to hear.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, guys. That was really, really useful to get some brief intros. And we have some questions coming in. And should we start off with some questions then, Pooja?
Yeah, just to highlight something that you both covered, actually you covered quite a bit of ground without meaning to, as you were speaking about your journeys, and it touches upon some of the questions that some of our attendees are asking. So I think, Amy, you spoke about the importance of listening, reflecting, and how that's really influenced your decisions moving forward. Sonali, you touched upon quite a few things that our attendees are asking as well, the importance of not seeing someone that you could relate to, having the confidence to put up your hand again once you did it once, and the importance of gaining confidence and becoming aware of roles. So to start off with, the first question that's come through is, are there any leadership projects that both of you would recommend for trainees to start off with?
Amy, do you want to start?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think it's a really good question. I guess leadership project is such a broad term, and I guess this comes back to kind of what we mean by leadership, which I think is a really interesting question. It's one that I don't have the answers to, and actually it's one I'd be really interested to get kind of people in the audience take on what it means to them, because I think we've got this traditional idea of leadership as when you're in this position of authority and power, and you can kind of tell people what to do and they'll go and do that. And I think as a trainee, obviously, if you're taking leadership opportunities, it's not going to be, well, I mean, it might be like that, but it's for me, I find it more helpful to think about, well, what do you kind of want to change? Like, what do you see in your work, in your workplace, in your practice, in the wider system, that you sort of think like, actually, like this could be, I've got ideas for how this might change, for how we could do things differently here, things that I want to try. And the other thing I'd say is don't try to do stuff alone. Like, I think significant change has to come through working as a team and working with other people. So I suppose leadership projects could be doing some quality improvement work, with a team in your hospital, in your practice, wherever you're based. And finding things that matter to you, I think personally is always great, because then you've got that motivation, because we are all so busy at work, and you've got all the clinical demands and your home life. And so I think if you can find things that really matter to you, that you want to pursue, try and get involved with them. And I think, as Sonali said, when you start to take opportunities, more opportunities come. And so I think, yeah, just that openness and curiosity and going out and engaging. And Sonali, do you want to please do come in and add to that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, isn't it, that as to what does leadership really mean? And it's a verb, it's an act of doing something. And really, I think one is, you're a leader in your own right. Whatever you're doing at home, within your community or within your workplace, you're already a leader there. So let me, if you're organizing a party or a celebration, that requires you to take charge, that requires you to lead from the front. So I think we feel that this leadership is a concept that is out there, where you need a bit of gray hair, very easy to get that these days. You need a lot of experience, and you need someone to give you this title. But actually, having been through and doing a lot of work on this, it's anything but that. I have seen leadership within my practice. So my secretarial team, she used to organize our Christmas parties. She was the one who made sure that we were absolutely there on our well-being agenda, and that we had a meetup that was there every 3 months. So she felt that was what was driving her, whether it was for herself or the wider team. So it's an act. That's what I would say. For people who are in training, and I think quality improvement, something that Amy alluded to, is really important. And you could be doing anything, whether it is in your practice or hospital, whether it is about, think about something simple. Urine samples that are coming into practice. Is there a system? Does the receptionist know what to do with them? If you have spoken to someone on the phone and asked them to bring in a urine sample, what is the whole journey that it needs to go through? Where does the form sit? Where does the patient know what to do with them? Do all the urines actually need dipstick? Have you looked at the guidelines? Is the practice actually following the NICE guidelines that you don't need urine samples for those who are under the age of 65? So something as simple as that could become your quality improvement project. And what you've done in your own consulting room, what you can do then is also speak to those around you and say, have you tried this in your practice? Or what is really happening in your practice? Other things that we see quite commonly in general practice are documents. We get lots of documents from A&E, from the hospital. What is the process that is already in place? And what I would certainly say to all the trainees or those who are coming to their end of training, or just believe me, all your ideas are welcome. There are people who have been out of training or been a general practitioner maybe for 10, 12 years, and you start to feel a bit jaded. You feel, been there, done that. We need a new, fresh pair of eyes, and we need your ideas. So go and knock on that door or arrange a Teams meeting and say, I've had this idea. I think we could probably refresh this idea. Don't talk about, it's not always about change. It's just about refreshing the idea. You said about leadership opportunities, set up informal groups. Talk to people in your peers that are there, and that could be ST1s talking to ST2s and 3s. And those who are coming to their end of the training, engage with, there's probably a trainee transition program in your area, so engage with that, because you'll hear a lot of opportunities there. And those who have just qualified, there is a new to practice fellowship program, and every new to practice GP is entitled to this new to practice fellowship. And that's a 2-year program that is there, which includes mentoring and support. It also includes one session, one CPD session for which you get backfill, and you can start to do some of your projects. So do ask in your area, what is the new to practice fellowship program? Engage with your training hub. That's another place where you will hear a lot about opportunities. And then what Amy said about the FMLM leadership or the fellowship that is there, which is a very useful thing that I would certainly encourage all of you to look further into.
I'll move on to the next question whilst we sort out what's happening with Aman's mic. Amy, Sonali, can you hear me? Okay,
yes,
brilliant.
I can hear you.
Okay, so moving on to that, you're absolutely right. Leadership does not have a specific stereotype. And so quite a common question I feel that is asked, I'm an introvert. Do you think that would be a barrier for me to take up a leadership role?
Shall I go first again, Sonali? So no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, one of the things that I think's been another learning point for me is how you build teams that are complementary to you. And I think part of it for me is recognizing that none of us can do it all. None of us have all the abilities or whatever. And it's about finding a team that works well with you. And so I absolutely not. I mean, I've in as much as you can sort of know whether people are introverted or extroverted, I've worked with people who consider themselves to be introverts and are incredibly strong leaders. So no, definitely wouldn't discourage that. I think it's just about finding what works for you, and there's no one way to do things. And it's fun finding out along the way what you do like doing and what you don't like doing, and sometimes putting yourself in a situation which makes you feel uncomfortable and see how it goes. And if you really hate it, you don't have to do it again. But yeah, that would be my take on it.
Yeah, I think, and it's been quite a revelation, hasn't it, Amy, as to whether we are introverts or extroverts during this pandemic, as to, you know, the way we've all probably responded to it. And I think we also go through phases where, you know, and just being aware of it in itself, I think is quite helpful. I think one of the things that I have certainly noted, whether one is an introvert, whether one doesn't feel they have the confidence, or this over talked about this imposter syndrome or imposter moments that we talk about, we do have to start to change the narrative that we tell ourselves. And that is something certainly I think I tend to use quite a bit. There's also a very good TED talk that I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was by Amy Cudding, if I'm not mistaken. And she talks about, you know, standing in a particular pose before you go into an interview, and she talks about fake it till you make it. And, you know, there is still every meeting that if I have to go to, or if I have to present to, I have sweaty palms. I still have palpitations. My heart is racing at a, you know, currently my heart could be racing at about 100 beats per minute. So it's the narrative that you tell yourself. One, you have the permission to make a mistake. Nobody is perfect. We all learn as we go along. And two, it's also about building your own skills. So a couple of things that I would suggest to people who are wanting to build in, whether you're a leader in your consulting room, whether you're a leader outside, is something that we did was a strength-based assessment. And we did that during our Next Generation GP program. Another program I would certainly recommend to all of you, whether you're a trainee or you've just qualified as a GP, just put in Next Generation GP into Google and have a look. It's a leadership program where we get a chance to interact with senior leaders or leaders who are in certain senior roles, come and engage with all of us. And certainly that was something that really helped me along my journey. Just hearing from them, their vulnerabilities, what they have come across. So Next Generation GP is certainly something I would recommend. Strength-based assessment, it's again something you can look online, but a lot of Next Generation GP programs offer that as a part of the program as well. And it's really about looking at your strengths and building on those strengths rather than just looking at your weakness. And the third I would say certainly is coaching. So again, for all those who are working in primary care, there's a program called as Looking After You Too. Again, if you just put that in Google, and the NHS People plan offer this to anyone working in primary care, whether you're a clinician or a non-clinician. And these are some of the things that you can utilize to actually just get that confidence. It is being able to speak the language, being able to articulate your thoughts, because that's what's, you know, to be able to articulate your thoughts is what really helps, and trying to then bring people along. Leadership is about bringing people along. It's about collaborating with people. It's about building networks. And you may use any channel to do that, whether you do that through speaking, whether you do that through video, whether you do that through a WhatsApp group, but trying to bring people along and gradually increasing your sphere of influence.
That's great. Can you guys hear me now? Sorry, I don't think you could hear me earlier on. Oh, fantastic. Great. Just go back to your earlier question. Sorry, the urine sample thing was amazing. It's such a simple concept. And I think a lot of trainees come to us and say, what can I do as my leadership project? And it's something as simple as documents or urine samples, and the day-to-day stuff that you see that can cause problems or delays or barriers that are so simple to turn around. I think that's a really super example. So many trainees are looking and wondering to think, what can I do? I've got to do something. That type of thing is super useful. The things that you do on a day-to-day basis that are going to impact lots and lots of people, even though you may not see it as a big leadership project. But sorry, that was from before. But yes, some super answers, and the introvert thing was really interesting as well. And Next Gen GP, as you mentioned, Sonali, has impacted many trainees and newly qualified doctors. So definitely, and newly qualified GP, sorry, so definitely get involved with that if you can. But some more questions then. So what resources did you use, if any, to get into leadership positions, to both of you?
Oh, I'm not quite sure what to say there. I don't think I did, but I guess this probably comes back to what you mean by a kind of a leadership resource. Sonali, please do feel free to come in.
I'll come in. Okay.
To say, but yeah, I think for me, I suppose what drove me to be interested in this was kind of curiosity and engaging with people and talking to people. And one, I guess, sort of tip I would give, which isn't really about a leadership resource, but is that if you read something that you're interested in, like an article in the BMJ or whatever it is, and you think, gosh, actually, like that might change my practice, that will change, like that really resonated with me. Email the person who wrote it, because you know, it actually matters to people, that kind of feedback. I think if someone's genuinely engaged and interested in their work, and it can open up really interesting conversations. They don't necessarily kind of go places, but it's I guess for me it's about just kind of, yeah, being open to things that you're interested in and seeing what happens. And sometimes opportunities come from that and sometimes they don't, but you've had an interesting conversation and connection at the end of the day, and so that's a good thing in itself. So yeah, that would be a sort of tip from me, but it's not really answering the question about leadership resources, I don't think. So Sonali's probably got a better answer on that.
No, I think that's helpful, Amy, that, you know, in terms of, and again, it means different things to different people, isn't it? So I can tell you a few things in terms of formal and informal stuff that I may have done. As a formal program, I certainly went, I did an Edward Jenner program, which is again an online program that, you know, again, just you can put it on any search engine. It's by one of the leadership academies. And I found that very useful. One of the modules that still stands out, I think, in my mind is about giving feedback, and what you just said about Amy. But as I was getting through my roles, I realized that I should be giving feedback to, I was supervising a nurse prescriber, and I should be able to give her that constructive feedback. It's, you know, we all have had very varying experiences of getting feedback, isn't it? But it's about the constructive feedback that actually helps you build on that strength-based approach as well. So certainly it was the Edward Jenner program I think I did more formally. And then there was another program that was happening in the Midlands area. I would certainly advise all of you to look at your leadership academy as well. So just go on to a search engine and put NHS Leadership Academy. There is a national NHS Leadership Academy, but each region also has its own. So I come from, you know, spend majority of my time in Midlands, and Midlands Leadership Academy is certainly doing a lot of work. You'll see some programs such as Ready Now program, Stepping Up program, which you might find that you need later on in your journey, but have a look at that. We've just today, I've launched a program where we are looking for women specifically from diverse ethnic backgrounds. We know they haven't had a chance to probably make it into senior leadership positions, and look at it now. Dr. Nikki Kanani, Prerna Isar, seeing those people in leadership positions is so encouraging for all of us. But we know that there aren't many. You know, we need to extend the table and invite more people in. So we've just launched a program for sponsorship. So that's a bit of the formal stuff that is there. I think informal, I would go back again to your peer groups. So I do a lot on social media. One of the things that I have utilized in my head, Facebook has been something for me to connect with my past. So all my friends from school or college, but Twitter has helped me to connect with my future. And that's where I tend to follow lots of people to be able to really engage with them. And there are lots of people that I've met on Twitter, never met them in real life, and pinged them a message and said, do you mind if we just have a brief discussion? Can I have 10 minutes of your time to really understand about, you know, where you are in your leadership journey, and is there anything I can do to learn from you? Not once have I ever had anybody decline. And you would therefore, you'd be really surprised that you feel that, you know, as if the leaders in senior role, they're sitting in an ivory tower somewhere and they don't want to engage with you. And that's far from truth. They want to engage with you. They want to actually take that energy that you're bringing with you still as trainees and new GPs. So approach them, follow them on Twitter, ask questions, engage with people. And the third I've done is lots of, you know, WhatsApp groups. We all have kind of lived our lives, I think, on WhatsApp group during pandemic, if not beyond. and you just help to grow and learn more through those ideas. So find out what's happening locally, because that's where you'll get a lot of information. There have been lots of broadcast groups that have been set up during pandemic, because that was the information, a lot of that one-way conversation, just so that you are plugged into what's happening in your area.
Thanks, Sonali. That was really useful. Once again, just to reiterate some of the points, and I think it comes back to that golden question: what does leadership mean to you? And therefore, what resources you would use to. An interesting take on social media about Twitter being your future and Facebook being your past. I wonder where Instagram fits in that, really. But I think, once again, key points there. If you hear Amy and Sonali, they're not afraid to approach people. One of the things that I certainly found useful on my journey was not putting people on pedestals and being afraid to approach them. As Sonali and Amy have said, that most of the time people appreciate you approaching them in the first place, and it's very rare that somebody's actually going to turn you down. And having that curiosity can only help you progress further. So in the last few minutes, because I know we are sort of at the end of our time, I think a really important point that I just want to raise, that somebody's raised themselves. I've found that there is a resistance to foreign medical graduates going into leadership roles, especially if you're not white and middle class. It's gone from a white middle class gentleman's job to a white middle class women's job. Whilst I appreciate more women need to come into leadership, why is it that BAME men, women are not in enough leadership roles? So if we could very quickly, I know it's very hard to answer that in a very short amount of time, but I'd be interested to hear both of your views on that, really.
I mean, it's such an important question. It's such a loss. I think if we don't have a truly diverse, leadership representation, it's a huge loss. And I think it's something that, I guess everyone's conscious of. I guess we do live in a society where societal structures put barriers in place for people, and there's a lot of work going on in terms of what we can do to reduce that. But I think it is really important to acknowledge that this is hard. This is a lot harder for some people than for others, and privilege matters in these situations. I don't know, Sonali, if you want to come in on that more, but really, really good question.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think we spoke about it earlier as well, as to kind of, you can't be what you can't see. And certainly something that kind of stays at the back of my mind. See, the first thing we have to do is start with acknowledging that it's not been a level playing field. And saying anything other than that is not going to give it the absolute due significance that is there. But there is an intention to address it, and that has to be the place that we start from. We have to learn from the mistakes made in the past, and the change has to come at every level. And the way I see the change happening is probably at 3 levels. What can I do as an individual within my space, whether it is to improve myself or those around me? And therefore, something in that about lifting others as I'm climbing. It's about not pulling that ladder up, but making sure I keep the door open for anyone who's standing by the side of me or just following me. So that's very important. That's what I can do as an individual. What can I do in my sphere of influence? I'm going to constantly ask the question, who is not in the room? Why are there not more people who look like me in the room? In our college council, in the Royal College GP Council, if you had initially had a look at the council board, there were not many people who looked like me or you or Pooja or Aman or, or even for that matter, women. So, we weren't there. But last year, there were many of us, there were 30 people who decided to stand for the council. And there were 4 of us, 4 new women, all from diverse ethnic background, who got elected to the council. So change begins from within. If it's not you, then who? And if it's not now, then it's when. So that's what we can do, to ask the question regularly around you as to who is missing from the room. And then the third is probably the system level. Every leader who is currently on the table, so it's the responsibility of each one of them. Are they ready for the mirror to be raised up to them, to have those uncomfortable discussions, being comfortable with that uncomfortable sense. They all need to become active sponsors. It's not about me and you having more training, more ability to just speak up. I can keep on doing that, but if there's nobody going to be who is ready to shine the spotlight on me or you or anyone else to say, here is somebody who has done all the work that they needed to. All they need is that shine the spotlight and give them that springboard to be able to get onto that ladder so that they can go ahead in their career. And then it's society as a whole, each one having their responsibility to challenge where those barriers are. Next time when you're crossing, so this was something I read, a really interesting book of a doctor who became blind during the course of his training. And he was talking about just navigating the crossings, or navigating, actually he was talking about a temple where he went, and he found it so hard to be able to navigate it because they had not thought through that they had actually put some physical barriers for him not to be able to navigate that place. So what are those barriers that have been created by the society? Whether it was consciously or unconsciously, we can debate that out. But what are those barriers that have been there? And now is the time to crash those. So yes, I think first step, acknowledgement, we are not anywhere there, but speak up. Speak up, look up, and lift up as you go along. Please make sure that if you're getting onto that first step of the ladder, that you keep door open for those following you.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Lots of comments coming in saying, feeling inspired, brilliant talk, going to jump into leadership. Someone's put, the question is, why would you not want to take up a leadership role? So if that's the impact that you've had, that's great. And as you saw at the beginning, the poll said that a lot of people are interested in leadership, but it's still, for a lot of people, seems this kind of distant roles in the future, that one day I'll get into a leadership role. But actually, as you guys have clearly highlighted, it starts from the beginning. Small changes and just having that intention is the first step. So thank you so much, guys. I think that's been really, really helpful. And there are still other questions that are coming in. So I don't know if you mind us forwarding a couple of questions on to you. But Pooja, anything else? Oh, fantastic.
Please do. And thank you so much for having us.
Perfect. No, it's been super. Pooja?
No, absolutely. Thank you. Lots of positive comments. And yes, there are some individual questions that I'll forward on to you guys, but really appreciate it. And it's really important actually to highlight what both of you have said, the importance of being curious, to work together, and not to have that fear of speaking up. I think those are really key points. So thank you for taking out time on a Saturday to help us out and inspire trainees across the country. So thank you ever so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us. And happy for anyone to get in touch. I'm usually living my life on Twitter, so people are more than happy to just ping me a message, and absolutely happy to have a chat with them.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Bye.